Hello, and welcome back. Today I'm going to be going through these heads and seeing what the damage is from that catastrophic failure this engine had. Since that engine had metal flakes going through it, I can see a little bit on the cam lobes here and the cam followers that there's a little bit of wear in this head. I'm hoping it didn't get too bad underneath these cages here, but let's dig into these things and see what the damage is and if it's even worth trying to save these. So as you can probably see here, the toolbox that I'm working on used to be full of stuff. I actually cleaned it off for once. Probably only going to stay clean for about maybe 2 hours. But hey, it's clean, right? So let's get started here. First, let's take off our cam caps here. These are 10mm bolts, so I'll get these out real quick. As I suspected here, there's quite a bit of scoring on these caps here. This doesn't look good. I don't know if I'll be able to save these. This one isn't looking too great either. You can see that there, here. That's pretty scored up. So is this one here. We'll see what the machine shop says about this. I don't think we're going to save these. The cam looks as expected. There's a little bit of wear on there, but it doesn't get chewed up quite as bad as this aluminum. Looking at the bottom side of these ones right here don't look too bad. This one up here, on the other hand, that's got a lot of pitting. It's very rough. Doesn't look too good. It makes sense why these are so clean though, because as these lobes are pushing these down, it's the caps that are taking most of the damage, not these. So let's get these cam followers out of here. Some people call these rocker arms. You can call them rocker arms, you can call them cam followers. I'll know what you're talking about. And rolling these, they don't feel too bad. There's the surface of it doesn't look that great though. And let's get our lash adjusters out of here, or some people like to call them lifters. So there's a couple different ways you can get the keepers off the valves. You can take a socket, put it over this, smack it with a hammer. But when I was still working at the machine shop, what would happen is if you weren't careful, this could slip out of your hands. I remember a guy, it slipped out of his hands, and he's lucky he was wearing safety glasses because it went up and hit him right in the safety glasses. So that is a way, not the recommended way, but it is a way to get them out quick. There is another tool that works very similar to that actually holds the keepers in place, because if you do it this way and this thing goes flying, those keepers like to go flying too. So there is a tool like this where if you put the cam back in, you can hook this around the cam and push down on the spring to get the keepers out. It's not a terrible tool, it's just not my preferred one either. I prefer to use a tool like this. The way this tool functions is you have this little handle here to get it around the head. these cages here, depending on the size of your valve, you would switch this if it was a bigger spring down here to get the keepers out, but this one will work here, and you basically just screw this to the certain point that you want. If it was a little bit thinner going this way, and this would go down here. This part right here would go on the surface of the valve right here, and you would just screw this in and it pushes the spring down, and then you can get the keepers out and take the whole spring off at that point. This doesn't need to be tightened with a wrench. It's just meant to hold it slightly in place. So I'm going to screw the bottom here. And just broke loose from the keepers. Going to continue to go down with it. I'm going to take a little screwdriver, pop those things off of the valve stem here, and then take a magnet, get one and the other one, being that this is screwed down far enough, you could lift up on this, but there's a lot of tension here, so this would spring up at you. So it's better just to unscrew the bottom and loosen the spring nice and easy. Once it's loose all the way, then you would pull this lever up. We'll take our spring and retainer off. Then we can pull the valve out from the bottom. Then we can pull our valve stem seal out. Just like that. This is one of the culprits for burning oil. Oil will actually leak past the seal, go down the valve stem, and it will go into the combustion chamber, and that's one of the reasons why an engine would burn oil. The other one is if your piston rings start going bad. Oil will leak past the piston rings and into the combustion chamber and burn. So, same process for the rest of the valves here. Just take your tool and remove them one at a time. Next, I'm going to take out the spark plugs. I'm just going to take them out with an impact. You don't want to reuse them after that point because impacts can cause the porcelain to crack. But whatever head I end up going with, I am going to put time certs in and the real ones. There are some coils that you can put in, and I've used them before, but I wouldn't trust them, not for long periods of time, because what ends up happening is it creates little holes in the side of that coil right next to that plug. Any of the compression that's leaking out, the heat from it is going to melt that coil and the aluminum. So at that point, you have to go with a time cert, and the oversized time cert. I'm just going to start with the time certs. They're really, really nice. It takes it from 3 threads to the entire thing being threaded, and it is the best thing on the market to fix 2 valve heads. I'm going to put the cam cages back on for now. Not going to tighten these down all the way, just put them in a couple threads. Now that the cages are back on, I'm going to flip this over and we'll take a look at the underside. So looking at this thing, you can tell it's been in service for quite a while. These exhaust ports right next to the valve guide, it is just caked full of carbon. I don't think I've seen it caked quite so bad before. Intake ones aren't too bad. Looks like there's a little bit of oil leaking past, so this was burning just a little bit of oil. Other than that, I think the only thing that we have to worry about is the cam cages. That seems to be about the biggest damage, at least for this head. They do make some bearings that go around the cams for these cam caps. I don't know much about them. I'm going to see what a machine shop says about it. If I can use those, that's probably going to be the way I can save this head. One cool little feature with 2 valve heads, it blew my mind once I was actually told you could do this. 2 valve heads are reversible. If you have 2 lefts, you can make a right. If you have 2 rights, you can make a left. There's a specific way on how you do that, though. Let me get you a closer look. So here's the front side of this head. The one that was actually where the chain was riding through. Of course, this is where the tensioner sits. But if you plug this hole, it blocks oil from coming through here. This is what feeds oil to the tensioner. It has threads already. There's a plug on the other side of this head that's the exact same threads as this. If you get a plug and you put it in here and you take the plug out of the other side, this head then becomes for the other side. So if you can see right here, this little plug, it doesn't have an Allen wrench on it, but if you can get that out of there, a tensioner can fit right here, and it makes it from left to right or right to left. Here's the head that I am really curious about. This is the head that caused all the problems by breaking off a valve. where that came from is this valve right here. So let's get started by taking off the cam caps. All right, looking at this cam cap, sat this way, and right here, not too bad. These look really bad. There's actually metal flakes on this one. So if I can't get the bearings to fit in here, these heads are probably going to be junked. All right, same thing. This head really was torn apart. It's really bad here. All of them, actually. Metal flakes showing on this one. Not terrible on this one. Metal flakes on this one. Looking at the cam, same kind of wear as the other side. Steel is not going to take as much wear as this aluminum. The wear on these, again, don't look bad. Just that front one. For some reason, the front one looks worse. My guess is because of the timing gear that's on the front, it's pulling down. So that's probably why there's more wear on this specific one. Let's get these cam followers out of here. These ones, they look rough. Really, really rough. It's been nice, but I am not going to reuse them. Then we get our lash adjusters out of here. I don't know if you can see this. You see all that goop on there? That's all metal shavings. Man, this is this head is rough. All right, let's get these valves out of here. I'm going to start with this one, work my way down. The bad one over here, it is definitely sitting higher. I'm going to have to figure out something to get that out of there. Oh boy. So this one here doesn't want to come out. This is the same cylinder where the broken valve is. I'm gonna see if I can't hit this just a little bit to try to knock it out of there. There we go. Wow. Take a look at that. It came out with the valve stem guide. That broke right in 2 pieces. That is insane. Okay. I am really curious now if this head is cracked. And actually, you can see that valve is bent. So this piston definitely hit this valve. This is where the fun part comes in. There's nothing really to push against on the bottom side since the valve is broken. I mean, that's what I'm supposed to be pushing on. So I'm going to try to push against the valve stem from underneath. I hope I can get this. I don't guarantee anything though. We'll see what happens. Looks like it worked. Keepers just came off that retainer. Okay. Get this spring off here. All right, I'm going to try to knock this thing out of here. There it is. Looks like it's a little tapered right here, which prevents it from going through the valve guide. But man, that was really stuck in there. I'm going to get the spark plugs out of here real quick. Apparently that one doesn't want to come out. I'll just take my magnet here, get that spark plug out of there. Now that we have it all disassembled here, let's flip it over and take a look at this valve guide here. So looking at this one's definitely dirty. Makes sense because there is no valve here. These other seats and combustion areas look good. There's a little bit of carbon buildup on all of these exhaust ports. But man, this one right here, that guide is gone. Looks like it just broke off halfway, and the other part's still sticking in the head. Let me get you a closer look. All right, I hope you can see that there. Move it around so you get a little bit of a perspective. Let's take a look at another one to get a little bit of perspective at what we're looking at. So right here, that bigger one, that is what it's supposed to look like. Sticking out of the head a little bit, not all rough. So that is some pretty significant damage on that other one. Looking at the damage that's on these heads, first, Magnaflux. I gotta see if this head is actually cracked. The other one I think is going to be okay. The issue is these cam caps. With these cam caps, factory, they did not come with bearings, which I understand aluminum does have properties that make it a cam slide super easy in here. But when these things start to wear down, there's nothing to replace, which is usually the downfall for overhead cams. But Summit makes bearings that if you can get your machine shop to actually do this, what they'll do is they put the cam caps on here, they will line hone the cylinder heads and make it fit the bearings. They'll have to put little tangs in here and whatever, but that's a fix for this head. If the machine shop can actually do that for me, I can save this head. So anybody who has these heads, think about doing that first. These bearings are only $72 for a set, so one head, so $140 for a set of two heads if you have this damage on both sides. But unless you're going high performance with trick flow heads and you don't want to spend the money on heads, try to save these. Because this is definitely an engine it's not in production anymore, and there are going to be a diminishing number of them if they go to scrap. I mean, it killed me to take that 4.6 to the junkyard, but if it's got a crack in it, I didn't want to take the chance. And I don't necessarily have a plan for that 4.6, but when it comes to cast iron parts, you can't weld because the metal is dirty. That's just what happens in the iron casting process. It's very unfortunate that you can't save them if they crack. These aluminum heads, on the other hand, I'm going to try to save this with those bearings. I called the machine shop. They're a little worried about having something that will go this small of a bore, but they're willing to actually look into this for me. So I hope they're going to be able to do this. I hope there's no cracks in this head. If there's no cracks and we can do the bearings, I have heads that I can use for this 5.4, and that is super exciting. What I'll probably do from here is I'm going to order up the bearings. If they're cracked, yes, then I can't use them, but I have other heads that I can use them for. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these heads with those bearings and get them over to the machine shop and see what they can do for me. So I'm going to do the time and research into this, and I'll let you know exactly what happens with this process. That way I can hopefully save you a little bit of time and money with your build. Now here's a question for you guys. Now that you've seen the teardown of this engine and the head and all the conditions that were in it, I'm curious what you guys think was the initial cause of this. Was it the valve breaking off on the head, hitting the piston? Was it that the bearing spun and then the piston started slapping the head more than it should have and bent the valve? I don't know. I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on it. Go ahead and leave me a comment of your thoughts on this. If you enjoy content like this and getting this in deep into these parts, go ahead and give me a like. And subscribe so you don't miss anything on this 5.4 swap on this Mustang. If you do have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave it in a comment down below. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you on the next one.